Hey, Jenny.
I see you because you're 5 feet away from me.
I also see you because you're 5 feet away from me and I'm wearing my glasses.
Oh my God, we're in the same room in your basement.
In my basement.
I'm so happy to be here. So before we record season 3, episode 1 together in the same room,
Together in the same room.
This little bump for our race talk number 2 with our super awesome friend, Head Sorceress Shawn.
Yes.
We are recording this little bump because in the episode with Shawn, we mentioned that Shawn's new book is available for pre-order. However, since the time we recorded the episode, the book is now fully available. It has been published, and the link for the book is in the show notes.
Yeah,
so you should snap that up.
Yeah, you should. You absolutely should. Another exciting news here from Etheria is that we are looking for an interim producer.
Yes, someone who will work with us for about 6 months.
Yep.
It's up in the air for now. It's a paid position.
And we're looking for somebody to not only kind of edit and hang out with us in Gay Scream while we are recording, but also can work on our TikTok and Instagram because I'm a Luddite. I'm too old for that.
Yeah, we need someone to make our TikTok videos, edit our eps, and manage our Insta in a more low-key way. So the 3 main things.
Yeah, so if you're interested in that, you can email us at heyadoracast at gmail.com.
Yes, you guys know how to reach us.
Yes. And I'm also really excited about we have a Patreon live watch.
Yes, our next Patreon live watch is coming up on October 22nd.
We're going to watch some wild ass shit.
Yeah, we haven't decided yet, but as we have done in the past with our fun Patreon patrons, you guys can vote on which episodes we will watch. It's going to be at 2 p.m. Pacific, 5 p.m. Eastern, 10 p.m. UK.
We are so excited to Gay Scream with you on our Patreon.
Yes.
And if you're not a member of our Patreon, you're missing out because the live watches are so fun.
Yes, because we're a small community, so you guys can chat with us, hang out with us.
It's
very informal.
You know, Gay Scream.
We have a lot of fun up in there on the Discord.
We have a lot of fun up in that Discord. So hit us up on Patreon. And if you're interested in helping us out and being a member of the Heyadora team, you can email us at heyadoracast@gmail.com.
That's right. And you can get Shawn's book, link in the show notes. It's a very, very cool, spooky, dark fairy tale written in poetry form.
I'm so excited. Are you ready for this episode?
I am so ready. Are you guys ready?
Oh, so ready.
Kick it.
Let's do it. Hey folks, and welcome to Heyadora, your queer She/Her podcast. I'm Force Captain Math, they, them.
And I am Princess Jenny, she, her.
And we have a very special guest today to have our sequel to our very awesome episode that you may have listened to earlier. This is our SPOP and Race episode, the sequel.
Yes, it's our very first recurring guest.
Our first sequel, our first recurring guest. So let's all give a big rebellion welcome to Head Sorceress Shawn. Welcome back.
Welcome back, Shawn.
Thank you.
So give everybody a little heads up about if you didn't listen before or you want to remember who Shawn is. Shawn is a playwright, an author, and a huge nerd. She's the creator and the facilitator of Queer Women in Torah Workshop. She has a new workout. It's called The Red Door and is a dark fairy tale told in story poems and was a semi-finalist for the Kaveh Canaan Poetry Prize. It is currently available for pre-order at Ben Yehuda Press.
Yeah.
So, previously on Heyadora, a Queer She/Her podcast, conversations about SPOP and race, we chatted about some things like the racial paradox of Etheria and how Etheria, though is technically a race-blind society, it has the feeling and seems like it's just super-duper white. We also talked about race understanding of queerness. We had some great conversations about Azula.
Azula from Avatar: The Last Airbender.
From Avatar: The Last Airbender, and who was the character from Once Upon a Time? I never remember.
Regina Mills.
Regina Mills, yes. And just kind of understanding how race impacts our understanding of trauma and empathy and queerness and all of those fun, totally lighthearted topics here that we often,
light and fluffy. Nothing too serious.
Because, that's what I think of when I think of our podcast is light and fluffy.
Well, we're a full-service podcast. We cover it all.
We absolutely do.
We laugh a lot, but we also tackle the heavy stuff, and that's why you guys love us.
That's true. So we have a couple of new things today that we wanted to bring up. Just kind of sit and have a little bit of a chat about. So Shawn, you wanna take this one?
Yes. So yeah, like before, I think I said before that like this is not a racism 101 type of conversation, and that I'm not really interested in asking, is this racist? Is that racist? I'm not. That's an evaluation that's like.
That's kindergarten. That's not a productive conversation.
Yeah.
It's not where we're at. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it permeates everything because we live in a white supremacist society. So racism permeates everything. We have to move past that and talk about how it affects the things that we consume and how it affects us by virtue of how we consume them. By being more aware, we can be better, more critical consumers. Is that a fair statement, Shawn?
Yeah, that's fair. More than fair.
Cool.
Okay.
So moving right along, so that we've established that.
Fantastic.
Yeah. So the new stuff I guess I wanted to talk about, where there's some stuff that I was hoping some questions or whatever would follow up from last time, but new stuff. Racial prejudice and discrimination in Etheria. What? Prejudice and discrimination in Etheria? In my Etheria? It may be more likely than you think.
Yes.
Yeah, last time I think I said that Etheria has no prejudice or discrimination based on race because they're technically race blind.
Right.
They want to think of themselves as race blind, as many Americans would like to think of themselves. That self-perception doesn't automatically mean it's true.
Right.
Yeah, but then I was like, well, maybe I'm wrong because there's this little part in Princess Prom where Scorpio talks about, and I quoted the actual bit of dialogue here. She goes, I never really fit with the other princesses. I made them uncomfortable, and they don't like that. They don't like me. And Catra responds in her Catra way. It's like, and that's exactly why you have to go. How dare they pretend to be better just because you're different? And there's hints that Scorpio may have experienced some kind of like bias or prejudice because she was born looking a certain way. And then, spoiler alert, when we get to season 4 and she defects to the rebellion, Scorpio brings it up again and she says, the Horde always told me I was different, that I wouldn't fit in with you all, but you're making me feel the opposite of not belonging, which I guess is belonging. And darling Scorpio, never change.
Preach!
We love you,
Preach!
Scorpio.
Yes.
We love you, Scorpio.
And she's like, it seems easy to dismiss because, well, I mean, they're the Horde. Of course they'd lie about something like that,
Absolutely, yeah.
Oh, yeah, your family totally just gave you up. We didn't slaughter them or anything.
Yeah, right.
But at the same time, other than Scorpia, none of the princesses have these distinctly non-humanoid features.
That's true.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I mean, Froster can use ice to make pincers, but and I know that Mermista can shapeshift into a mermaid, but it's not the same as like walking around every day with a pincer and finger in the exoskeleton.
Yeah, it's true. Like Scorpio doesn't have the mutability that Mermista has. Mermista can visually code switch, right? Like,
yeah, she's only a mermaid when she's in the water.
And she's only a mermaid when she's in the water and she transforms into a mermaid.
Does she have the control? Because I got the impression that when she touches water, she turns into a mermaid, a la Daryl Hannah in Splash. If anyone is old enough to remember that gem. Or
if you're a weirdo like me, you remember, or also possibly younger, the Australian television series H2O. It was about Australian teenage girls who turned into mermaids. And the only reason I know about it is because one of my bandmates' daughters was like obsessed with it.
So did they turn into mermaids by choice or by virtue of water exposure?
By virtue of water exposure. And it was like a countdown. So it's like, oh no, I got hit with water. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Oh no, I'm a mermaid. I can't do anything because I'm not in the water. And every single episode was really convoluted. Oh no, I spilled Coke on myself and now I'm in the water. Now I got water on me.
Coke also counts as water. Anything with water in it.
Well, anything with water in it, yeah. I might be exaggerating that, but every single conflict was, oops, I spilled something on myself.
Oh, that kind of reminds me of Princess Tutu.
I don't know who that is.
No.
Anime, it's amazing. I love it. It's anime, so bear with me. The explanation is kind of weird.
I'm with you. Let's do it.
There's this man who wrote stories, and he wanted to write this grand tragedy. And but the characters get sick of the story. So there's a spell, like a forbidden spell, and the story maker gets inspired because he lays eyes on this duck and puts the duck in the story, but the duck is transformed into a girl in the story. But if she does anything duck-like, say quack or fall in water or something like that, she turns into a duck.
Wait. Okay. First of all, this sounds awesome because it sounds like a magical girl anime, which obviously I'm about, right?
Yes,
but
it's magical girl ballet anime.
I kind of love that.
Get your Tchaikovsky on. It's a really awesome anime. I think it's on Amazon Prime. Princess Tutu.
Cool.
Yes, watch it.
All right.
Awesome. I definitely will.
H2O, Australian mermaids, Princess Tutu,
Yep.
Duck girls, all good.
But we are not talking about those things. Oh, we are talking about the things only in the sense of Scorpion not being visibly different.
Yeah, and there's also on the horde, there's Rogelio, who's a literal lizard person, and there's Catra, who's a cat person. And I think the background, there are some Etherians who, are obviously non-humanoid, but they're in the background and they don't have
there
names.
are townspeople all over Etheria who are not humanoid. There are goat people and fishy people with gills.
And other cat people that aren't like they're more cat-like instead of Catra, who's human with cat features. They're cats with human feature type of things. But they're right. Those are all background. They're all backgrounds. They're maybe have one or two lines.
But when it comes to Scorpia, especially from those two examples that you gave, Shawn, about in Princess Prom, when she's talking about not fitting in, it seems in Princess Prom like she's talking from her direct experience about, they don't like me. I make them feel uncomfortable. I don't fit in with them. Versus in the episode later on in season 4 where she defects and she says, the horde made me think that I wouldn't fit in. That's more of hearsay. So in one situation, it seems like she did have some direct experience. But I always wondered, it's impossible to know to what extent is it based on her behavior. Because she has no pretense and no guile. She doesn't seem to have social skills to know how and when to lie to be polite versus this is me. Everything you need to know about me, I'm going to put it right out in front of me because I am a wholesome, guileless character and, I have no pretense. And most people don't know how to respond to that versus anything to do with her physicality. It's hard to know how you can parse those things out.
Right. Yeah. I think later on in that episode, Fractures, when Frosta makes pincers because she thinks Scorpia's pincers are so cool. It's they can pretty much cut through anything. So of course, Frosta thinks that's amazing.
Of course.
Right. She does it. And then Scorpia bursts into tears.
Right. That's right.
Yeah.
That's, I guess, alienated her whole life. It's it's really embraced.
That's a really good point.
By this person who's basically a stranger.
It's a really good point.
Right. Yeah. I always read a lot of the Scorpia stuff, especially some of the physical comedy stuff where Scorpia can't hold on to things.
That's right.
As also kind of allegorical for physical disability.
That's right.
And that's why I kind of get bummed out by when they do the physical, I can't hold my folders.
Right.
They're too slippery.
She can't work this remote even though they're telling her that she's in charge of this remote.
Right. And it's fucking make it accessible.
Right.
And also, just the idea that her physicality makes people uncomfortable can, also be tied into that sort of the types of things that happen, in different manifestations of ableism as well.
Right.
Or is it a disability if it's her entire...
If it's her entire...
ethnic group / racial group.
Yeah. Exactly.
It's not a disability. This is her physicality as,
Right.
It's not our baby was born different. They're just like everyone else in her family.
Yeah, her parents also had pincers and stingers. So.
Yeah,
right, exactly. But the world that she's in is not one that is accommodating of pincers and stingers. And
I think they like the stinger because you can knock people out with it. But
exactly, it's useful, right? It's useful to others.
They like having her around as the muscle.
Yeah, when it's convenient.
Oh yeah, there's so much about Scorpia and race and disability is not my wheelhouse, but how all that combines and how that's expressed and how we parse that like how we conceptualize those things and parse those conversations. But in addition to Scorpia, you know, there's Rogelio, and there's and we talked about how the townspeople can be visibly distinct from humans,
Right.
But
Right.
like the named characters who have lines, not so much. And it's interesting that like the character designs that visually emphasize the humanity of the good guys, while the bad guys get the more alien or animalistic features. So I was wondering, and then Rogelio is such like a, how do I say this? It's such an obviously ethnic name.
Yes. Yes, absolutely. I noticed that too.
It's an obviously ethnic name. I mean, I guess Kyle is an ethnic name too, if you think about it, because everybody has one. But like,
wait, no, I mean, Kyle is a particular.
You're saying Kyle is an obviously ethnic name?
I mean, yeah,
he looks like a Kyle.
Yeah, he looks like a Kyle, and
he does look like a Kyle.
Yeah, it's like he's not just Kyle who has no race or ethnicity. I mean,
whiteness is an ethnicity.
Yeah,
Kyle is obviously Kyle the white guy.
Yeah.
So it's like, okay, Kyle. Like, I'd be surprised if Kyle looked like Bo. Like,
yes,
okay.
same.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Absolutely. But that's in the same way that, you know, whiteness is invisibilized as a racial category, in the same way that maleness is invisibilized as a gender category, broadly speaking, in social discourses. You know, I think that people won't think of Kyle as an ethnic name unless you make it explicit that whiteness is also an ethnicity.
Yeah. So Kyle is kind of like, I wish I could be a fly on the wall in that writer's room when they came up with that. Because, like, first of all, it's such a, God, and I'm saying this as a Black person, it's like, it's one of those names where it's like, yep.
Like Chad.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's like, yep.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, there's a whole like meme about it, right? Like the guy, like there's the whole like meme understanding of the guy Kyle who drinks the Monsters energy drink and, you know, does, you know, rides on his like 4-wheeler. It is definitely like that like blonde kind of dumbass guy. Not like our Kyle, who is, you know, effete and wonderful and imminently yeetable, but as in once somebody sees him, they want to yeet him.
Yeah, it's like all the bad things happen to him.
Like,
yes. Yeah, which you know, it's kind of a fun turn. You know,
of course it is. I
guess the one exception is the Kyle from South Park who's Jewish.
He's Jewish, yeah.
That's right.
Which is interesting.
That's right.
But then there's a whole can of worms with the South Park guys, which
I was going to say, there's a whole thing with the South Park guys, and
Nope. I'm here to enjoy myself talking about, you know, gay love saving the universe.
Amen.
Exactly.
Amen.
Exactly.
Yeah, so we have Kyle and Rogelio. And you're right, Rogelio is the only one with an overtly quote-unquote ethnic name.
Yeah.
Non-English American name.
Yeah. Distinctly non-Anglo.
Yes, that's a better term. Distinctly non-Anglo. And he doesn't speak English. He's the only one in Etheria who doesn't speak English. And yet somehow everyone understands him, even though they don't speak his language. He speaks to them in his language, and they all speak back to him in English. Although most of the time, I think the running gag is that most people don't understand him, but Lonnie and Kyle do. Even
Catra does too.
And
right? Catra and Adora.
I don't know. I don't know if they ever really. I don't know if they ever really speak directly to him. I sometimes get the impression that the only ones who really understand Rogelio are Kyle and Lonnie, because the three of them are powerhouse polycule.
Yeah.
But I feel like they translate for him rather than the idea being that everyone understands Rogelio, but they just don't speak his language, but they understand. I really feel like it's just the three of them that understand each other. So there's this language barrier that no one ever bothers to try to overcome. They just sort of let it be.
Right. And I wonder how much of that we can read as an element of the setting or like something going on in the writer's room.
Can you speak a little bit more to that? What would it be if it was an element of the setting?
Like the thing with Scorpia, how she was saying the princesses wouldn't accept her or whatever. She was led to believe that by the Horde.
Right.
And she also hints that she's had experiences feeling excluded or left out because of how she looks.
Right.
And I'm wondering, it's like, okay, now is it the Horde that is teaching them this? Or is this like just is this a deliberate choice on the part of the writers to characterize the Horde this way as like teaching what is the term they have for their recruits? The war children or whatever you call it.
War
like
orphans?
The soldiers are cadets because they're young. And they refer to Adora and Catra as Shadow Weaver's wards. So perhaps ward is the word we were looking for in terms of the children that they raise versus cadets in terms of the soldiers that they then train from the children.
Right. Yeah. So I'm wondering if it's to tack on the evil, or, tack on more evil aside from genocide and colonialism and whatnot.
Yeah.
Is the Horde itself teaching this, or is this just something that the writers thought was interesting to put in the script?
Right. Yeah. I think I see what you're saying there.
Yeah, that makes sense.
The Horde is written to be a colonial kind of genocidal invader. Right. And this is an aspect of genocide, right? You go into a place, you decimate a population, and those that you absorb, you then, completely indoctrinate into your way by saying, well, your way was wrong, right?
You're lucky to even be here among us.
We have taken you in and they will not understand, but we will make you one of us and therefore superior, right?
Yeah, and then there's that spoiler alert thing with Horde Prime where they're literally carbon copies of white dudes who are literally white.
Yes, and they're all the same white dude, reproducing that same white dude and his white values just over and over forever.
It's they're literally identical white men.
Which is the scariest thing imaginable. One white man forever and ever and ever and ever.
Space white dude with dreads.
Yeah. Oh my God.
White dude with dreads. That's the worst part.
It is the worst. Oh
God. Isn't the voice actor black though? Or
he is. John. Yes.
Okay. So it's it's the black voice actors playing the evil guys with the deep voices. I'm here for that.
Yep. He also he's the voice of Hordak, Wrong Hordak, and Horde Prime.
Okay.
So he gets to have so much fun doing all these different characters.
Oh my God.
Yeah, Keston John is his name.
Oh, cool.
Yep.
Yeah.
This is clearly a work of fiction because the bad guy is kind of interesting and compelling versus what we see of the people who want the kind of world that Horde Prime wants. Not that compelling and interesting, really.
I mean, is he compelling and interesting? He just wants everything to be what he wants, how he wants it, his way, and nobody else matters.
Yeah, it's compelling in a weird way. I guess it's like the Darth Vader thing where it's even before you knew his backstory or whatever, it's just I don't know, it's something about the cape. Something about the helmet and the cape. It's just, I don't know, it's something about the aesthetic that really works such that whenever Horde Prime is on the screen, I'm not ugh, this dude. It's, oh crap, this dude.
Yeah, that's fair.
Right, yeah.
It's fair. Oh crap, something bad is going to happen.
Yeah. I mean, it's scary.
He reminds me of the monster in these scary movies. It's the alien, the xenomorph and alien. I don't really. Right. The psychology of the xenomorph is not exactly what draws me in. It's just something
right.
Then not even the nature of it. It's just you have to watch.
Yeah.
It's something about it. You can't stop watching.
Yeah.
Versus something where it's more of this stuff.
It's well done. It's scary.
Yeah. And it's a villain that you just want to keep a villain, right? And I think that's one thing that we also have at the end of the series. And also, it's something that ND has said, where it's sometimes there are bad people that are just bad. Sometimes there's just a bad guy. That they just have to go away, Yeah. And it's this is a show that and this is the type of bad guy that just has to go away. There's no redemption for this sort of thing.
Right.
They just need to go.
Right.
We have and we have so many people on the show that are, that are antagonists and have done things and have made wrong choices, but he is not choice. He is just pure evil.
Almost no one is past redemption. Almost no one.
Right. Almost no one is past redemption except for the person that is literally an embodiment of an unredeemable quality.
Yeah. Yeah, it's he's past the point of no return long ago.
Yeah, there's no course of events is ever going to happen that's going to make this guy change his mind about his worldview.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't need to see a fucking origin story about Horde Prime.
Because it's not going to change anything.
Yeah, please don't. No, that's just, I can see it now. A certain segment of the YouTube populace turning that into their like right-wing recruitment video.
Yeah.
I don't
Oh
want
God.
it.
I mean, to be fair, those people like wrote the show off before it even started because like they didn't show Adora's tits. So like,
Oh, right.
yeah.
The people who were mad that they made Adora less sexy than she was in the 80s version.
right?
It's like, I want to be turned on by my cartoons. What the fuck?
Yeah.
Oh God. That discourse, I was just like, please, can y'all not just once, just delay it a little bit. I know it's impossible to ask you not to do it. Just delay it a little bit. Let the trailer come out first.
Yeah, I kind of want to steer the conversation back a little bit to the idea of, you brought this up in the notes that you sent, of the idea of physical appearance and morality and normal and normal and good and odd and bad. And I would love to kind of dig a little bit deeper into that, because that is absolutely something that happens. It's such a common trope, not only on this show where we see that, like, all of our, our best friend squad are literally, human or humanoid, right? Etherian, who are human, versus like all of our, bad guys, right? Everybody from Catra and Scorpia to Tongue Lasher to, literal robotic clones of bad white dudes. Like, they are divorced from humanness physically, and then therefore divorced from humanness from morality. So,
right. Yes, let's dig into that.
I'd love to.
And then
Yes, please.
Then we'll dig into Glimmer. But,
yes, please.
But one thing I want to be very clear is that I'm not trying to like equate Etherians with non-humanoid features with like real life racial and ethnic group, because that's a whole bucket of problematic.
Yeah. It's not a one-to-one, right?
There's a whole bucket of problematic that I'm not trying to endorse there.
This is a fantasy show.
It's just, yeah. And it's just that, like, the patterns that we get from like cultural osmosis that link certain physical features to humanness and goodness versus others. And how race impacts that is like I said, this is not a situation where I'm trying to say, well, the show is racist because they play into this thing. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that this thing exists in the world and we're impacted by it.
Yes.
And it shows up in the most unlikely places, where, even in Etheria, which is flat out fantastical and technically doesn't have racism, even race as a meaningful social construct.
Right.
Well, they don't have racism because they don't have any meaningful cultural diversity. They have characters of varying skin tones, but they're all created by writers and artists. Well, I can't talk about the artists. I'm just talking about the writers who are creating the culture of Etheria. All of the writers come from the same cultural background because they're all white. So even though we have cosmetic diversity in Etheria, where we see characters of different skin tones, there is not genuine cultural diversity.
Right.
Yeah, I also would like to bring up, since you keep talking about the other, I actually want to bring up Edward Said.
Yes! Let's talk about Edward Said.
He was a sociologist, right? I believe he was a sociologist.
Yeah.
He was very instrumental in comparative cultural studies and post-colonial studies. He was really influential in kind of generating those ideas as academic studies. And in 1978, Edward Said wrote the book Orientalism. I'm just going to read from the Wikipedia right now. As a critical concept to describe the West's commonly and contemptuously depiction and portrayal of the East, aka the Orient. In Orientalism, the sense that Western scholarship about the Eastern world intrinsically ties it to imperialist societies that produce it, which makes Orientalist work inherently political and servile to power. So that was kind of his whole thing on the, Orientalism, but he introduces the concept of the other.
Yes. And also, I think it's important for us to say that Edward Said is Palestinian. So we're grounding this conversation in American and Western understandings of Palestine and the Israeli-Palestinian conflict.
Yeah, and just to be clear, he really expounded and brought kind of the idea of the other to intellectualism at the moment, contemporary intellectual conversation. But, othering and the other are kind of older conversations in like structuralist and post-structuralist philosophy and phenomenology. I can never remember how to say that word.
Yes. So I found my favorite Edward Said quote.
Awesome. Yeah.
So it doesn't necessarily relate to the topic of the other and how we construct notions of the other, but it's still very juicy. So, in the year 2000, Edward Said wrote an article to introduce the art of Mona Hatoum. She was a Palestinian artist, and she did this great art installation of domestic objects. And the objective, in Edward Said's words, was to make viewers remember and disturb them at the same time. The domestic objects that make up the installation and performances of this artist have been subtly transformed so their everyday nature is on par with the way they surprise us irreconcilably. Therefore, a home ceases to be a comfortable and welcoming space, and the known structures also become hostile and dark. The beds have no mattresses, and the doors open only halfway. Mona Hatoum's art is therefore difficult to bear and yet terribly lucid, just like the world of refugees, for whom belligerent intelligence is always above conformity. So all of that is just to frame this quote. And this quote that I was obsessed with in college is, a belligerent intelligence is always to be preferred over what conformity offers, no matter how unfriendly the circumstances or unfavorable the outcome.
Ooh.
Mhm.
Damn. Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah, that's
hardcore.
Yeah, dude. I mean, dude, it's fucking hardcore.
Fucking metal.
Yeah, it's fucking metal.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I think it's important to kind of bring up that understanding, and that was my little mini Professor Smart Brain kind of nugget there.
Good times.
Thanks. But it definitely plays into here in Etheria, and it's often benevolent. Like it's like, you know, the quote unquote benevolent racism, right? So it's the there's also the benevolence thing here. In Etheria, it's not that the writers, and I'm kind of going with the writers and the character designers and everything, aren't doing this as they are evil, they are bad, but just the fact that they are different makes it easier for us to then kind of project our own, the inhumanity on it, and therefore.
Right.
So.
Yeah. I'm trying to think of any like bad guys who are just flat out humanoid. And I'm not counting Kyle or Lonnie here.
Right.
I mean, the closest we get is Catra, but even she is humanized in a way. She doesn't have like a cat head.
Yeah.
She
I mean,
like,
Shadow Weaver.
Right.
We don't see her face. She is scarred.
No, but we see her elf ears.
I mean, she has elfy ears, but otherwise, you know, she's human.
and she kind of does she even have feet?
Yeah, we never see her feet.
I'm saying she's more humanoid than Rogelio or Catra, you know.
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
But it's like anyone who's like not a clone or a shadow magic consumed masked person.
Yeah. We're right. We can also like have the other be, you know, other in terms of, you know, non-corporeal too, right? Like,
Yeah. I mean, I guess part of her is physical, part of her may not be.
right.
It's like the whole mystery of who Shadow Weaver was. I mean, I imagine she used to have feet.
But yeah, I mean, when we saw her in Lightspinner.
Was she born with feet?
We saw more of her face in Lightspinner.
We're demanding Shadow Weaver feet pics here, guys. That's what we're doing here at Headora. That's where we're at in this.
But even so, with Shadow Weaver, there are a couple of factors here. There's like Lorraine Toussaint is her voice actor.
Yep.
We adore her.
Yeah, like who is that? A lot of people would be like, but like there's also like in her backstory, she has a facial covering.
Yes.
Like
yes.
that covers like most of her face.
Right.
And it's like, so is that like hijab or something? Or it's like, what is
Well,
like,
we talked about that in Lightspinner because we talked about the fact that Etheria has no religion. So it's not a hijab. As far as we know, there's no religious reason for facial coverings in Etheria. And she wasn't scarred until after, you know, that backstory episode took place. So why? There is no explanation ever given, other than the fact that she wants to maintain this air of mystery.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, we know she's dramatic like that, but I was like, it's an interesting choice considering. I'm like, well,
right, and then she does lose humanity because when she becomes Shadow Weaver, she literally is masked. Like, so there is that there is a detachment from humanity, even though her body is humanly shaped. She is essentially a sentient mask with, like, you know, spooky hair.
And rags.
Yeah. Like, she is a shade. She's
a human.
Like
she's a human shade.
She becomes a shade. Yeah.
She's like a ring wraith, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. Or a Dementor or whatever, or Shade or any of these
Yeesh.
That was a really good point. Not just about Shadow Weaver, but the general question, can you think of any bad guys in this show who are fully humanoid?
Right. Yeah. I just want to jump in for a second because I was thinking about the non-humanoid bad guy and the humans. And when do the humans become... Because we do have instances when the humans do become evil, and that is when they are possessed.
Mm-hmm.
It's body snatchers, right? It's Invasion of the Body Snatchers. It's a possession.
Who else gets possessed besides Adora?
Oh, no, the chipped.
Oh,
yeah, the
right,
chipped
the chips.
Spinnerella and Spinnerella and Mermista and
all of them.
I wasn't thinking body snatcher to me does not equal possession. Those are two very different things in my mind, but I understand now that you're equating them.
Yeah, exactly. But I mean, and that's what it is. Like their body is being taken over. They're being used as like a puppet for colonial white supremacy.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's how you know he's evil. White.
Yes,
he's a white dude with dreads. But that is a fascinating kind of like twist on that to the only time where we see our humanoid characters, presenting characters become evil is when they're not in control of their human attributes.
Yeah.
So once again, we still have them as an inhuman version of humans and therefore are still othering them in order to make them villains.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's right.
This is interesting.
Tasty stuff. This is tasty stuff.
Yeah, we're not saying... The show is so racist for doing this and not saying that.
No, of course not. Of course not.
We're not saying that. We love the show. It's just one of those things in the culture miasma that seeps through.
That's very well put.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you brought up Darth Vader as an example. I mean, Darth Vader is, he's an evil dude that is a helmet. But then when you see Darth Vader, right, when he takes off the helmet, he's
pasty giant grub of a white guy.
But also is not human. He's not fully human anymore.
Ugh.
That's right.
So I want to talk about Glimmer.
Let's talk about Glimmer.
All right, Sparkles, let's go.
Let's go, Sparkles. So Shawn, you had some ideas on how race impacts the way that fans expect Glimmer to relate to Adora and to the rest of the squad. So, and specifically around Glimmer's trauma.
Yeah.
This was a really juicy part of the last conversation we had. So I would love to hear your thoughts on kind of where we are with that, with specifics. So,
yeah. So like really, I guess really, impactful for me was watching that YouTube. Like I had a weird feeling about it for a while, but then I saw this YouTube video called In Defense of Glimmer.
I saw that too, and I agreed with everything 100%.
And it's like...
Yep.
Yeah, and because a lot of people are like... I browse Reddit. I'm not on Reddit.
No judgment. And we will definitely put this video in our show notes because it's important.
Yeah, and Glimmer gets a lot of hate.
Yes, she does.
For not being
she does.
supportive enough of Adora.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, she has her own issues and her own stuff going on,
She's
and it's
got a kingdom to run.
Yeah.
She's got a lot of her own shit going.
She's got a lot of expectations on her shoulders.
Yeah.
Yeah. And she's got this thing with her mom, and I know like because Glimmer is relatively sheltered compared to the people that the Horde killed, but she's still impacted by this war in a very real and visceral way.
Yeah, I mean, she lost her dad.
Yep.
Yeah, her dad, she grows up more or less without her dad. Mm-hmm. And I don't even know how much she remembers of him. Right. But she keenly feels his absence. And there's so many of the comments I've seen about that, whether she should have done this, that, and the third. I'm like, hold on, wait a minute. She's making decisions about survival. And not to be cold about this, but friendship kind of comes second to that. That like when you're a head of state,
yes, just like Frosta. Frosta makes a lot of the same points that Glimmer makes.
Yeah. And it's like, she can't prioritize her buddies, her friends over the well-being of the kingdom or ending this freaking war.
Yeah.
That has devastated Etheria for who knows how long, from decades as far as we know.
Right.
And, and that war is, real to her in a way that it wasn't real to Adora until the beginning of the show.
Right.
Yet I think people expect her to kind of drop everything and cater to what Adora needs. And it has echoes of that Black best friend thing, like that person of color who only exists to support and comfort and protect the white person.
Yeah.
Right. The white
Very
protagonist.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's like, guys, or not guys, but people, she's got a lot of her own stuff she has to work through. And, that she's being called a bad friend or not supportive or, they call her, stupid or whatever.
Or that she's too egotistical.
Yeah. Or that she's being egotistical. And it's like, really?
It's like she has a lot of weight on her shoulders. She has the welfare of an entire kingdom to think about. She can't just think about what she wants. She has to think about.
Well, also she is ego driven, and she is driven by those things. And that's not a bad thing. She's a fully fleshed out character, and she shouldn't be held to a higher standard than that as well.
Like, she comes in for a lot of hate in season 4.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, that's
a lot of hate.
Which is not to say that she doesn't make mistakes, but everyone makes mistakes in this show. It's a rocky journey. It's a long road.
And season 4 is the big Glimmer season, right?
Yeah.
Like that's when
the Dark Night of the Soul.
It's the Dark Night of the Soul season, and Glimmer's is dark because Glimmer just lost her mom.
Yeah,
like not only just lost her mom, she lost her mom, whom she believed sincerely was immortal.
Yes.
Who everyone believed was immortal.
Well, yeah, because she couldn't die. She just
couldn't
disappeared.
Like, immortal angelic being, mom. I mean, it's like how do you even wrap your head around that?
Yeah.
You literally expected your parent to live forever.
Yeah.
Right.
Always there, always at the castle, a little bit of it. It's like, and then in a moment, it's gone.
Yeah.
Yes. And that is so poignant in Glimmer's growth, too. Because, that's something that we, we as adults that's a kind of a really scary and hard thing that you go through as an adult.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you think your family, you think your people are going to live forever.
And we don't even really literally think that. Like, we know on some level that everyone's going to die, but Glimmer never had to face that for her mom.
But Glimmer never had to face that. But of course, it's fantasy, right? Like that's what it does. It takes the micro thing and it blows it out. Yeah, and so we're watching somebody literally go through like one of the biggest, most traumatic like parts of a person's kind of like maturity and movement through their life, and then has to shoulder the burden of a kingdom, and then has to shoulder the burden of being a war commander.
Yeah.
Like
in the most dire possible time.
Dire possible time to do this. And people,
Anyway, so what's our next topic? Moving on from Glimmer. Or did you have more you want to say about Glimmer, Shawn?
Yeah, I sort of, I guess I wanted to touch on like what it is that makes Glimmer's trauma so easy to overlook.
Yes. Because
I don't have a thesis about that. I just have questions.
Okay.
So I was like, okay, so how does race impact the ways that Glimmer's own trauma has been minimized in fandom? So that's my note.
Well, I guess my question here is that, so last time we talked about how Catra's trauma sometimes is minimalized. Not minimalized, is villainized. That's not a word, but I'm going to use it. Vilified is vilified by segments of the fandom, and having Catra's kind of manifestations of trauma seen as abusive.
Right. Mm-hmm. And that relates back to the Azula Regina conundrum. Yes. And we did talk about that before.
I think my thing here is that, especially in season 4 and a lot of the series, we see that Catra and Glimmer are kind of more written in parallel with each other than, say, Catra and Adora, who are written as complementary of each other. That was like that was the only thought that I had around that.
Yeah. They both end up on Horde Prime's ship. They've both made choices that have gotten them there, that somehow they're starting to see each other's points of view a little bit more in ways that Catra and Adora aren't quite ready to see each other's points of view, but Catra and Glimmer are. Just a little bit?
Yeah, I'm thinking about it in terms of the fandom too, right? Like both of them have made pretty hard choices.
Yes, they have been forced to make hard choices because they don't have the luxury of sitting on the sidelines. Yeah, I think that might be something, Shawn, you can tell me if you think I'm off base here, that characterizes a lot of white critiques of women of color especially is that, you know, they don't like the hard choices they've had to make, but it's like, well, you're a white person, you have the luxury of engaging or not engaging. And if it's too messy for you, you can just sit on the sideline and say, well, I don't like the choices in front of me. None of them are good choices. Versus, you know, when you're a woman of color and, you know, you don't have the luxury of not engaging, you're going to be affected negatively no matter what happens. You know, these things are happening to you. You have to move forward and make choices no matter what.
Yes.
So,
yeah, I think there's some truth to that. Not to get too political on Maine here, but it's like those people who say, I'm not voting because none of the candidates inspire me.
Right.
And I'm like, excuse me?
Yeah.
The people who are clearly, overtly, and openly stripping rights away from people.
Right.
And you can't muster up enough wherewithal to do the bare minimum to mitigate that.
Right.
And it does infuriate me when it's sort of like that disengagement, like that. And it's sort of like, and of course, when you challenge them back, where it's like, well, what options did they really have?
Right. Exactly.
Nobody has anything to say.
Exactly. There is no ideal option on the table.
Take it about. It's like with Regina, it's like, okay, what options did she have? All her options were just like, you see it on the show, the way her options were taken from her.
Right. Yes. Yeah, and you see that with Catra and Glimmer, too.
Yeah. It's sort of like, well, okay, this option's taken, this option's taken, this option's taken. Now, what do you expect?
Right.
Or, and then it's sort of like, why do you expect a well-adjusted decision-making as a result of this?
Right. Yeah.
And then, and that's not even talking about their starting circumstances.
Right. Yes.
And so it's like, and so with Glimmer, it's like, okay, Glimmer is not only dealing with the loss of her mother, having the well-being of a kingdom on her shoulders, and being a military commander of a world war.
Right.
She's doing this without her support system.
Right.
Yes.
That's right.
Okay. And so all the people who would normally kind of hold her back or try to talk some sense to her are absent from her life for season 4.
That's right.
Like, because they're all doing whatever. And and it's like,
and she can't just engage with them the way she used to, because her position has profoundly changed, and she can't just ignore that and say, I want to keep doing what I used to do. She just does not have that luxury.
Nope.
Right.
So it's like, and then so it's like, oh, Glimmer was so mean for ordering them to stay. And I'm like, well, what did you expect her to do?
Exactly.
And also, to what extent is Asian racism as the model minority playing into this? Like, oh, Asian people are supposed to be nice and polite. Model minorities don't fight.
Quiet.
Yeah, model minorities don't speak up and disagree, and you're not supposed to be loud and rude and mean, and, you know, you're supposed to be polite, and you're supposed to just get along and be quiet and nice.
Yeah.
And
docile.
And this does not look like that.
Yeah. And Glimmer is none of these things.
Glimmer is none of these things.
Nope. Glimmer chooses violence.
Yes.
Glimmer is aggressive fist-to-face sparkles every time.
Yep, because that's what she has to do.
Yeah.
Well, I thought this would be a really good way to kind of transition into some of the things that you brought up about Bo and Adora, since we're kind of jumping into some of the season 5 kind of conversations about that, and how kind of both of them work with Glimmer, especially Adora. Especially Adora's self-sacrifice narrative and a savior narrative that she has. You had a couple of things here, and I'm just going to kind of read them, and then we can, I'd love to hear your thoughts. So the note that you have here for Bo is, does Bo's lack of meaningful flaw reflect an ambivalence toward presenting black men in a bad light?
Yes.
And then kind of going back to what I was saying about Adora, specifically, the self-sacrifice, the destroying the sword type of thing, is to what extent does Adora's character arc a white savior narrative?
Yeah.
Or the Mighty Whitey trope, which if you want to find that, it's in TV Tropes. Just look for Mighty Whitey on TV Tropes. TV Tropes is awesome, by the way. Sometimes when I get bored, I just sit and I read TV Tropes.
Yeah. It's great until you get to the TV Tropes is great with caveats.
Yes.
It's great for insomnia.
Yeah.
If you just want to widen your knowledge base of TV tropes.
Mhm.
Yeah, and I mean, like, people do not take it as, like, you know, the golden rule of
No,
all
of course.
of all things.
It's like Wikipedia. Yeah.
It's Wikipedia for character
Yeah,
nerds, but
Yes, and I think that, broadly speaking, of course, Adora's character arc is 100% a white savior narrative.
Yeah.
It is. There's no getting around it. Is that all that it is? Of course not. But you can't say that it's not that, because it is that. She
Yeah.
literally came
And
from
it's-
another planet down onto this planet to be like, have no fear. The white lady's here to save you.
yeah.
The nice white lady is here.
Yes. Nice.
The nice white lady is here from the people that have colonized this planet. Feels really bad
Yes.
about it. She feels real bad about it. And, I mean, to be fair, she is, like, taking some sort of action to make things better in a way that the planet has asked for.
Yeah.
It's not like she's completely being like, I know all of the answers and I will fix
Right.
this. But she's also not doing that in other ways too.
Yeah. It's like, it gets a little yeesh when you consider, like, okay, she's literally got blonde hair and blue eyes and she's
Yeah.
yeah, and that's also like if you want to talk about like the mighty whitey and white savior stuff, there's also like the kind of like there's Adora as a character that how would I put this? Like if Adora were a real person and she acted, and I was like in a resistance movement, and she was acting around me the way she acts around the Princess Alliance, and I'd be like, hold up, you just got here.
But they've all been telling her that she is their mythical savior from the beginning of the show.
Yeah, which is
So it's not straightforward.
yeah, it's just interesting that critique is not there.
It's true.
That like again, this is pretty much a children's show. I mean, I get it. It's it can only get but so dense as far as like addressing these like very complicated socio-political issues is concerned. So it's not like I'm going to rag on ND for being like, well, you didn't address this, that, and the third. I'm not doing that. Fandom, I'm not doing that. I'm just saying that like it's interesting that something that would definitely come up in my life is something that never came up in the show.
I'm just gonna throw like a little random like brain connection thought that like the person that literally like objectifies and mythologizes Adora is the other blonde girl. Like legit calls her the She-Ra.
Oh,
like,
right.
Perfila?
That's right.
Like, right? Like, without question, she's just, like, full on in
That's right.
for Adora the whole time. So.
Yeah. And like, I don't think, like, Andy went into it thinking, I need a white person for this role. I don't think...
Right.
Didn't ND originally pitch a black She-Ra and the network wouldn't go for it?
It was like...
Yeah, the network.
Yeah.
Something like that,
Something
right?
like that. And it was like, no, it has to be like the original 80s cartoon or something.
Right. The
Weird
original She-Ra, they wanted her to look
They
the
had
same.
to keep the brand. Yeah. It was Mattel. Mattel was like, we have to keep it because that is She-Ra.
Right.
There are certain things that you have to keep that is She-Ra.
Like, cue me rolling my eyes with that shit. But, there was studio shenanigans going on. Like, there was, how do you call it, intellectual property shenanigans going on with that.
Exactly.
Yep. Yeah.
So it's sort of like, okay, and it's just, like I said, it's like this common thing where, like, when you need a messiah figure, it just so happens that it always falls on this whitest of the white kind of character.
Yeah.
Like, if we're going to talk about Star Wars, like Anakin Skywalker, when he was Anakin, unquestionably white dude.
Yeah.
It's like when he's Anakin, oh, he's the chosen one, unquestionably white dude. And we're going to talk about that wizard book by that lady, chosen one, unquestionably white dude. And it's like
friggin' Buffy. Yeah. Buffy Summers.
Yeah. And then there's like speaking of Joss Whedon, and don't get me started on that.
I know.
Like the fact that his Firefly setting has all this Mandarin stuff.
I know, but somehow no actual Asian people. Just the language and the culture, but not the people.
1 billion and a third people just not there.
Yep.
What happened?
Yep.
It's like, and then it never gets addressed. It's like, hold on, wait a minute. What's going on here?
Yeah.
So it's like
problematic.
Blah.
Yeah, it's just
and I mean, I think Adora at least is aware that she has a problem with her savior complex, because that's what almost breaks her and Catra up at the end.
Yes.
Is that Catra is like, you don't have to play out this narrative.
Right.
Yeah.
And Adora just does not know how to get out of it.
Yeah, and it's framed, but I wouldn't say and it's framed as kind of Adora's personal issue as a result of personal trauma, as opposed to a reflection of the colonizer she used to be.
That's true. That's very true.
Yes.
So it's like,
yes.
So it's not presented as, you were taught that you had no value aside from what you're willing to sacrifice for others versus what makes you assume that we're not capable of doing this?
Right. That's a really good point.
Yeah. So it's like, look, we've been fighting this thing before you came along.
Right.
And then it's sort of like, and it becomes really, oh my God, I came very close to disliking Adora in season 4 because of that. And it's something like, I'm pretty sure most people listening to this have been in a situation where they are knowledgeable or have an area of expertise, and someone from a dominant group decides to interject and put themselves forward as the real leader and brains or whatever. And it's like,
perhaps someone who identifies as a man doing a little mansplaining.
Yeah. Mansplaining, whitesplaining, cis-splaining, like all of those things together. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Chad. Thank you. Sit down.
Thank you, Chad. Thanks, Kyle.
Thanks, Chad. And it's like, Chad's like, well, what she means is, or, well, I think we should sit down. Sit down. And it's not that, you want to create a situation in which people feel like they can't speak up or that it's this authoritarian kind of situation, like because Adora just got away from an authoritarian type of situation. And I understand the Princess Alliance doesn't function like that, but at the same time, it's her comfort in presenting herself as an authority figure.
Right.
At times above the actual princesses who are responsible for the well-being of their kingdoms.
Right.
And that's sort of like left the bad taste in my mouth where it's like, pipe down. Pipe down. Ease back, slowly roll.
It's a round table situation.
Yeah. And it's like, you're not in charge here. Value your input, but this is not where, and it's like when she's like making the plans and roll with it or whatever, it's like, that's okay because the whole group kind of consented to that. They were relying on her particular expertise in that situation. It's not in season 4, it was a little bit different. And yes, it's related to Adora's trauma and how she feels responsible for everything and wants to protect Glimmer and keep herself in this, that, and the third. But there's also like, Glimmer is a competent person. She's, there's a way you can, it's like, but her role in the world has changed. And it's like, you kind of have to adapt to that.
It's hard for all of them to adapt to the fact that Glimmer now has authority. They don't want to see her as an authority figure, but she is.
Yeah. It's like, I'm trying to think where it's like, because I've encountered this, I've seen it happen so many times where like there's a Black woman in a position of authority and suddenly all protocol goes out the window. Or all that respect that went to the presumably white and or male person to Chad, who just left, got a promotion somewhere else. And now like Keisha is in the position and it's like, oh, now we have all these suggestions. And it's insidious in a way. And it's like, and I'm not saying that the show deliberately went there. I don't think that was on anybody's mind at all. It's just when I, because I can't turn off being a Black woman.
You can't?
So I can't. I really can't. So when I look at that, it's sort of like, oh, okay, I recognize this.
Yeah, and I don't think fandom reactions are necessarily emblematic of creator intentions either.
No, not at all. I don't think the creators intended for Glimmer to be hated that much, by certain segments of the fandom.
I've seen a lot of people in the fandom, I don't know how it breaks down percentage-wise. I've seen a lot of people have very little sympathy for Catra and say that she didn't deserve her redemption arc, which I think is crazy.
Oh, yeah,
which I think is absolutely ridiculous. It's like she did the work. It's not like she just woke up one day and decided to switch sides.
Right. And we only see the beginning of it. That's the whole thing.
Yeah.
But we see her do so much meaningful work to change her behavior patterns and to identify and change her destructive behavior patterns.
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah, and it's like
what would you have her do?
She got punched on by Frost on site, so it's like...
Right, and that's pretty funny, though. I love
there were some consequences there.
Scene.
There were some consequences there for what she did. It's like, okay. So this whole weirdness about race and being a person in an position of authority and whatnot, it's like it's like I said, it's insidious and really tangled. And I hope fandom would think more deeply about it in retrospect, now, because it's like,
well, maybe some people will after they listen to this episode.
Yay!
Oh, I'd like that. Yeah, discourse.
That's what it's all about.
Yeah. So I think Bo. I think I had to say about Bo.
I think you're right. That question had not occurred to me before you brought it up. His lack of meaningful flaws reflecting an ambivalence on behalf of the writer's room to display black men in a negative light. I think you're probably right about that. They wanted to display Bo as, a beacon of non-toxic masculinity. And they really achieved that. But they almost achieved it too well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That should be the worst thing, is that they made a black man who's too perfect.
Let's burn them all at the stake. They all have to go. The whole series has to go.
Done. Canceled.
Canceled.
A black trans man, no less, with no flaws.
None. But it is interesting because I really had to think about that. It's like, does Bo have any real flaws? and I'm thinking like, and what does it mean for him to be a black man in that situation? I was like, because I couldn't think of any. I really couldn't.
Yeah, I mean, maybe the fact that, he was too passive with his dads and, rather than being willing to confront the fact that, like, the life that they wanted for him was not the life that he wanted for himself. And rather than face it, he just took the coward's way out and lied to them for years and years and years. And who knows how long he would have kept that farce up if not for the fact that Glimmer and Adora just showed up one day and they were like, hi!
Yeah. And then that got resolved in one episode in season 2.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
But even that's barely a flaw. It's like, oh, he just loves his family and he doesn't want to cause a fuss.
Yeah. It's not like Glimmer has flaws.
Yeah. Yeah.
Catra has flaws.
Yeah.
Adora has flaws.
Yeah, maybe you could say that Bo is the only character who isn't really, really fully fleshed out in, he doesn't really have a dark side. He doesn't really have flaws in a fully fleshed out 3-dimensional way.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's like, okay. And it's that thing where sometimes where it's like I said, I wonder, like, what's wrong with, why not give Bo any significant flaws? Like, I'm thinking about, because it's not like you have to go the toxic masculinity route to do that.
Right.
And I'm trying to think other male. Well, it's like, okay, what's the other? Okay, him versus Seahawk. We see Seahawk's flaws.
Yeah, we do.
He's such a glory hound, and
he's kind of a blowhard. He's a little bit of a liar.
Only because he's insecure.
Yeah.
And they really managed to give Seahawk flaws that do not feed into toxic masculinity in any way, shape, or form.
Exactly.
Right.
Which is amazing.
So it's like I wouldn't expect. Oh, only a man would set those ships on fire.
No.
For that reason. No. It's like, no, that's toxic masculinity where you keep setting boats on fire. Nah.
I mean, honestly, I feel like this show, as you mentioned before, Shawn, it's a short form show primarily aimed at children, all ages. But, they're just, and it's so dense. It's so dense with character development. It's so dense with plot. I guess they just didn't have time to make every character fully fleshed out. And if they're going to leave one character just being perfect and angelic and wonderful in every way, why not let it be the black man?
The black dude. The black dude.
Let him, if you're going to have one perfect person, let it be the black man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because that usually does not happen.
Mm-hmm. No. I mean, there's like, who else? Well, his dads who are just ridiculously supportive.
No,
they are. They're ridiculously supportive, but they're also, a little bit risk adverse in the beginning.
Yeah. Yeah,
a little bit afraid of conflict, which is, natural for parents.
Yeah, it's like I wouldn't want my kid to go to war either.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's fair. Hey, I went through this and it sucked.
Yeah.
Don't do it,
Yeah,
right?
no.
It really sucked.
Yeah. Considering how little screen time they get, I think they're fleshed out a reasonable amount.
Yeah, they're fine. I mean, they're fine. It's just like, oh, we see where Bo gets it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're about to wrap up, and we've realized that there is no tidy conclusion to
There's
this.
never going to be. It's like, we solved the intersection of racism and media.
We solved the intersection of racism and media.
We fixed it all by ourselves.
Yes,
we fixed it.
Yes.
We should all go out and enjoy a nice, refreshing Coke.
And as people, and maybe this just occurred to me, as people are watching, if you ever have things that you notice that make you want to ask us questions or things that you would like us to discuss the next time we have a race conversation, you can always email us, give us a shout on our socials.
Yep.
Because these conversations are always ongoing.
Mm-hmm.
So where can they find you online, and what are you up to next?
Okay. On Twitter, I'm at Project Zimzoom. That's Project TZIMTZUM. Coming up is I'm just coming off of like doing a Queer Women in Torah workshop for Shavuot, so I have to decompress from that.
Yeah, you gotta come down off the mountain. It's exhausting.
Yeah, as well as coming up in September, The Red Door is coming out, but it's available for pre-order now. I think we just said that. So yeah, I'm pretty much chilling and waiting for that.
Yes.
Woo-hoo!
Well, thank you, Head Sorceress Shawn, for joining us once again.
Thank you so much.
Always a pleasure. It was totally awesome.
Yes.
And Jenny, you need to watch Dragon Prince so we can talk about that next time too.
Oh man, you're gonna have a ball with Dragon Prince.
You're really gonna have a ball with Dragon Prince.
This Australian mermaid situation.
H2O.
I gotta check it out.
So it's two things: Princess Tutu and Dragon Prince.
All right.
Good news is Princess Tutu is only 26 episodes.
Oh, it's great. I could do that.
Only 26 episodes.
We'll see.
Yeah.
Well, folks, if you liked what you heard and you want to join us in more conversation, you can like and follow us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Play, or wherever you get your podcast fix. You can also find us on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook at HeyAdoraCast, or you can email us all of your fantastic recommendations for our next conversation or questions that you would like to talk about at heyadoracast@gmail.com. So we have a Patreon.
Yeah, we do. We have an awesome Patreon.
If you become a member of the Rebellion, you can get fantastic perks. And I think they're fantastic.
They are magic.
You get to be part of a really awesome community. So you can find the link to our Patreon, as well as a link to anything that you need, all of our socials, all of the fun stuff at
heyadora.gay.
That's right, .gay.
That is our master website for now and forever.
And remember, queer joy is radical.
And queer love saves the universe!
Ooh!
Woohoo!
Yeah!